Commander Jinho Park stood at the cracked windows of what used to be Neo Soul's command center. Outside, the sky burned orange and red. Alien ships moved like dark spots across the flames. Each explosion in the distance meant another human city was dying. He touched the communication device on his ear. "Admiral Lee, what's the status of the orbital platforms?" Admiral Suman Lee's voice came through, filled with static. "We've lost 12 more in the last hour, Jinho. The coalition ships are using our own weapons against us. The quantum torpedoes we gave them are tearing through our defenses like paper." Jinho closed his eyes. 3 years ago, humanity had been so proud. The Galactic Coalition had invited them to join their alliance. The reptilian Karathi, the crystal beings called the Vex, and the gas-form Nefari had promised friendship and protection. All they wanted in return was humanity's technology. Humans had been eager to share. They gave the Coalition their quantum jump drives, their neural link combat systems, their energy shields. Earth's leaders thought they were building bridges to the stars. Instead, they had handed their enemies the tools for genocide. "Sir, we have incoming transmissions from the civilian evacuation sites," said Lieutenant Minji at the communications station. Her voice shook. "The Coalition forces are targeting the refugee ships. They're not taking prisoners." Jinho walked to the tactical display. Red dots showed Coalition fleets surrounding Earth. Blue dots showed human ships, far too few of them. "How many civilians have we managed to get off-world?" "About 2 million, sir. But there are still 8 billion people down here. 8 billion. The number sat in Jinho's stomach like a cold stone. 3 days ago, it had been 10 billion. The Coalition wasn't just invading Earth, they were erasing humanity. His personal communicator buzzed. Captain Woo-Sung Kim's face appeared on the small screen. Behind him, the bridge of his stealth ship was dark except for the glow of red emergency lights. "Commander, Ghost Squadron is ready for the next strike. We've located a Coalition supply, convoy heading for the Luna base. If we hit them hard enough, it might buy the evacuation ships another 6 hours." Jinho nodded. Woo-Sung had been leading these hit-and-run attacks for weeks now. His squadron had started with 30 ships. Now, only 8 remained. But they kept fighting because that's all they could do. "Do it, Captain, but remember, survival is more important than victory. We need experienced pilots for what comes after." "After?" Woo-Sung's scarred face showed confusion. "Sir, there might not be an after." "There will be," Jinho said quietly. "There has to be." The transmission ended. Jinho turned back to the tactical display. The Coalition forces were closing in on the last human strongholds. Australia had fallen yesterday. Most of Europe was gone. North America was holding, but barely. A new voice came through the communication system. "Brother, are you there, Doctor?" Yuna Kim's face appeared on the main screen. She was Woo-Sung's younger sister, one of Earth's most brilliant scientists. Her laboratory was hidden deep underground, protected by the last of Earth's defense systems. "Yuna, what's your status on the Genesis protocol?" She brushed a strand of black hair from her tired eyes. "Almost finished. We've collected genetic samples from over 1 million humans. Different bloodlines, different cultures, different skill sets. The databanks contain everything. Our history, our science, our art, our languages. How many vaults?" 57 locations across the galaxy. Hidden in asteroids, dead planets. Places the Coalition will never think to look. If humanity survives this war, we'll have the knowledge to rebuild. When humanity survives, Jinho corrected her. Yuna smiled sadly. "You always were an optimist, Commander. Even when we were kids, you believed impossible things could happen." The command center shook as another orbital platform exploded above them. Dust fell from the ceiling. The lights flickered. "Sir," Lieutenant Minji called out. "Admiral Lee is requesting immediate communication." Admiral Suman Lee's image filled the main screen. She was on the bridge of her flagship, the Soul's Pride. Behind her, human crew members worked frantically at their stations. "Jinho, we need to talk about the final phase. My fleet can't hold the Coalition forces much longer. Maybe another 12 hours at most. How many evacuation ships are still loading? 43. They need at least 20 hours to finish. The math was simple and horrible. The human fleet would be destroyed 8 hours before the last civilians could escape. Admiral, what if we concentrated all our remaining forces in one final push? Hit their command ships directly? Suman shook her head. We'd lose everything for maybe an hour of extra time. The civilians would still die and we'd have no ships left for the evacuation. Jinho stared at the tactical display. There had to be something, some way to save more people. What about a diversion? He asked. Something to draw their main fleet away from Earth? Captain Wusung's voice came through on the communication channel. Commander, Ghost Squadron could make a run at their home systems. Make them think we're planning a major attack on Karathi space. That would be suicide, Captain. We're all dead anyway, sir. At least this way some of our people might escape. Before Jinho could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the command center. The tactical display showed dozens of new red dots appearing near Earth's moon. Coalition reinforcements, Lieutenant Minji reported. 3 full battle fleets. There, surrounding the evacuation routes. Admiral Lee's face went pale. They're not just trying to conquer us, they want to make sure no humans survive at all. The communication channel crackled with new voices. Ship captains throughout the human fleet were reporting in. The news was, all bad. Coalition ships were using human technology to jam their communications, disable their weapons, and punch through their shields. Sir, Lieutenant Minji said quietly, I'm getting reports from the ground. Coalition forces are landing in every major city. They're not taking prisoners. They're killing everyone. Jinho closed his eyes. When he opened them, his face had changed. The hope was gone, replaced by something harder and colder. Admiral Lee, change of plans. We're not trying to save everyone anymore. We're trying to save enough. What do you mean? Concentrate the evacuation on the most essential people. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, historians, people who can rebuild humanity somewhere else. Jinho, we can't just abandon. We can't save them. The words came out louder than he intended. Look at the tactical display, Admiral. Look at the numbers. We can save 2 million people, or we can lose everyone trying to save 10 billion. The communication channel fell silent. Everyone knew he was right, but nobody wanted to say it. Dr. Yuna's voice came through softly. The Genesis protocol includes instructions for genetic reconstruction. With the samples we've preserved, future humans could rebuild the population, even from a small survivor base. How small? Admiral Lee asked. Theoretically, a few thousand people could restart the entire species, but they'd need time, resources, and most importantly, they'd need to stay hidden until they were strong enough to fight back. Jinho walked to the window again. The burning sky looked like the end of the world. In many ways, it was. Admiral, begin the final evacuation sequence. Priority Alpha personnel only. Everyone else, he paused. Everyone else becomes part of the time we're buying. Understood, Commander. Captain Wusung's image appeared on screen again. Sir, Ghost Squadron is moving to attack positions. We'll hit every coalition supply line we can find, make them work for every victory. Captain, before you go, Jinho hesitated. When you see your sister, tell her something for me. What's that, sir? Tell her the war is ending today, but the hunt begins tomorrow. Wusung smiled grimly. The hunt, sir? The coalition thinks they're erasing humanity. They're wrong. They're creating something much worse. Humans with nothing left to lose and nowhere left to run. When we rebuild, we won't be the naive species that trusted them. We'll be something they've never faced before. And what's that, Commander? Predators. The next few hours passed in a blur of desperate battles and last-minute evacuations. Human ships fought impossible odds, buying time with their lives. Cities fell one by one as coalition ground forces advanced. But in the chaos, evacuation ships slipped away into deep space, carrying their precious cargo of survivors and genetic material. Captain Wusung led his remaining fighters in a final strike against a coalition command ship. The explosion could be seen from Earth's surface, a brief new star in the darkening sky. His sacrifice bought the evacuees an extra hour to reach the jump points. Dr. Yuna worked until the last moment, transmitting final data packages to the hidden vaults across the galaxy. Her underground laboratory was overrun just as she finished uploading the last genetic sequences. Admiral Suman Lee stayed at her post as coalition forces closed in on her flagship. Her final transmission was short. Earth remembers, Earth endures, Earth returns. Commander Jin-Ho Park watched from his command center as the last evacuation ships disappeared into hyperspace. The tactical display showed only red dots now. Earth was alone. He opened a communication channel to any surviving human forces. His voice was calm and steady. "This is Commander Jin-Ho Park of the Terran Defense Force. To any humans receiving this message, remember what happened here. Remember, who did this to us? Remember that we trusted them and they repaid us with genocide. 33 years had passed since Earth burned. The galaxy considered humanity extinct, just another failed species that had reached too high and fallen too far. They were wrong." Hyejin Choi floated in the zero gravity of New Busan's command center, watching her latest stealth ship phase through solid rock. The asteroid colony looked empty from the outside, just another piece of space debris in the Kepler belt. Inside, 50,000 humans worked in shifts, building weapons the galaxy had never imagined. "Captain, the Shadow Walker just completed its third phase test," reported Ensign Daeho from the engineering station. "She can stay invisible for 8 hours now, even with full weapon systems active." Hyejin nodded. The stealth technology had taken them 15 years to perfect. Human scientists working in hidden laboratories carved from asteroid rock had learned to bend light and energy in ways that made their ships ghosts. Coalition sensors couldn't detect them. Coalition weapons couldn't target them. Coalition nightmares were about to become very real. "Any word from the other colonies?" she asked. 3 messages came through the quantum relay, ma'am. Nova Jeju reports their new gravity weapons are ready for field testing. The intelligence network confirmed locations on 12 coalition supply depots, and the Forge Worlds are asking for more rare metals. Hyejin smiled coldly. The human survivors had not spent their exile years feeling sorry for themselves. They had been busy. On the ice world of Nova Jeju, 12,000 miles away, Taehyung Nam stood in a massive underground factory. The walls around him hummed with barely contained energy. Machines the size of buildings worked day and night, creating weapons that violated several laws of physics. Director Nam, the gravity hammer prototype, just crushed a test asteroid into a marble-sized sphere, his chief engineer reported. The quantum disruptor array can tear holes in space-time itself, and the neural warfare pods are ready for deployment. Taehyung walked between the assembly lines, watching his people work. Most of them had been children when Earth fell. They had grown up knowing only one truth: the galaxy was full of enemies and humanity would never again be caught defenseless. "How many ships can we equip with the full weapon package?" he asked. 200 so far, sir. But we need more exotic materials. The quantum cores require elements that only exist near neutron stars. Then we'll get them. Send a message to the mining fleets, tell them to expand operations to the Vega system. The human colonies had spread far beyond the reach of coalition space. While the aliens celebrated their victory, human ships had been quietly establishing bases in systems too dangerous or remote for normal exploration. Dead worlds, asteroid fields, the burning edges of nebulae, places where only desperate people would try to live. And desperate people, Taehyung had learned, were the most dangerous kind. 12 light-years away, on a mobile space station that never stayed in one place for more than a month, Minji Yoon coordinated the largest spy network in galactic history. Her agents looked like Karathi reptiles, Vex crystals, and Nefari gas forms. But underneath their artificial bodies, they were all human. Agent Storm reports from the Karathi capital, her intelligence officer announced. Their military is planning a major expansion into the Outer Rim. 300 ships, launching in 6 months. Agent Whisper on Vex Prime confirms that their research division has successfully reverse-engineered human neural interface technology. They're planning to use it in their next generation of combat units. Agent Ghost in Nepheri Space has located the site where they're building their new command fleet. 40 dreadnoughts, each one equipped with weapons they stole from Earth. Minji processed the information with the cold efficiency of someone who had learned to think like a weapon. Every piece of intelligence was another tool for the coming war. Every coalition weakness was another opportunity for human revenge. Send orders to all deep cover agents, she said. Begin Phase 2 infiltration. I want people in their governments, their militaries, their research facilities. When we strike, I want to know exactly where it will hurt them most. The genetic modification had been Dr. Yuna's final gift to humanity. Before Earth fell, she had developed techniques for altering human appearance so completely that they could pass for any known alien species. The process was painful and irreversible, but hundreds of volunteers had undergone it in the years after the evacuation. They lived among humanity's enemies, married them, worked alongside them, earned their trust. And all the while, they gathered information and waited for orders that would turn them from friends into executioners. Back on New Busan, Hyejin received a priority message from Earth. Not the planet. Earth was still a graveyard, monitored by coalition forces. But some humans had never left the solar system. They lived in the ruins of Luna City, in abandoned asteroid mines, in the wreckage of orbital stations. They called themselves the Watchers, and they made sure humanity never forgot what had been done to them. Captain, this is important, said Ensign Deho, his voice tight with excitement. The Watchers report a coalition archaeological expedition is planning to land on Earth. They want to study human ruins, maybe set up some kind of research station. Hyejin's eyes went cold. On Earth? Yes, ma'am. They're treating our homeworld like a museum. For 33 years, the human colonies had practiced patience. They had hidden in the dark spaces between stars, built their weapons, trained their soldiers, and planned their revenge. But they had also made rules. The most important rule was simple: no direct attacks until they were ready for total war. But this was different. This was about Earth. Send a message to all colony commanders, Hyejin said quietly. Emergency council meeting in 72 hours. It's time to discuss accelerating our timeline. The message went out through quantum relays that stretched across 1,000 light years. Within hours, response came back from dozens of human outposts. The Council of Colonies would meet for the first time since the evacuation. They had important decisions to make. 3 days later, holographic images of human leaders appeared in New Busan's council chamber. Taehyung from the Forge Worlds, his scarred hands still stained with metal from his factories. Minji from the Intelligence Network, her face hidden behind privacy screens that made her look like a ghost. Dozens of others, each representing a different aspect of humanity's long preparation. The coalition wants to turn Earth into a tourist attraction, Hyejin began without ceremony. They plan to bring alien visitors to see the ruins of human civilization. Our homeworld becomes their entertainment. Angry voices filled the chamber. Colony leaders who had spent decades preaching patience now spoke of immediate strikes, of revealing humanity's survival to teach the aliens a lesson about respect. Wait, said a calm voice. Captain Junho Lim appeared on screen from his deep space patrol ship. He was one of the original evacuees, a young lieutenant who had become humanity's most skilled fleet commander. This could be an opportunity. Explain, Hyejin said. For 33 years we've been building weapons and waiting for the right moment to reveal ourselves. But we've also been building something else, a reputation as ghosts. Strange accidents that happen to coalition ships in deep space. Equipment failures that can't be explained. Disappearances in systems where nothing should be able to survive. The other leaders listened carefully. Yunyo had earned their respect through 3 decades of careful planning and successful operations. The coalition leadership knows something is happening, but their people don't. To the average alien citizen, humans are extinct, and these incidents are just unexplained phenomena. But what if we start being more obvious? You want to reveal ourselves? Taehyung asked. Not reveal. Hint. Let them start to suspect that maybe humanity didn't die as completely as they thought. Let their imagination do half the work for us. Minji's image flickered as she leaned forward. My agents report increasing nervousness among coalition military officers. Unexplained losses, equipment failures, personnel disappearing without explanation. They're starting to ask questions. Then let's give them some answers, Junho said. Not the whole truth, but enough to make them understand that their victims have become their predators. The vote was unanimous. After 33 years of pure stealth, humanity would begin to let their enemies know they were still alive. Not through direct confrontation, they weren't ready for that yet, but through fear, doubt, and the growing certainty that something in the darkness was hunting them. The Mao first stage began immediately. Human ships, invisible to coalition sensors, started appearing at the edges of alien vision. Just glimpses, a shadow against a star, a distortion in space that shouldn't exist, energy readings that defied explanation. Coalition patrol ships would arrive to investigate, but find nothing except the growing certainty that they were being watched. Supply convoys began experiencing mysterious failures. Navigation systems would glitch, sending ships light years off course. Cargo would disappear from sealed holds. Communication arrays would broadcast strange signals in languages the coalition computers couldn't translate, but which sounded almost like ancient human transmissions. On Karathi Prime, military commanders held emergency meetings about the ghost incidents. Similar discussions happened in Vex Crystal Towers and Neferi gas cities. Something was stalking. Fleet Admiral Dongmin Song stood in the holographic command center of his flagship, the Earth's Vengeance. Around him, tactical displays showed 17 star systems across coalition space. In each system, human ships waited in the spaces between dimensions, invisible and ready to strike. All units report ready, Admiral, came the voice of Captain Su-young from her stealth destroyer. Phase shift drives are charged, quantum weapons are armed. We can hit them simultaneously across 3 spiral arms. Dongmin nodded. Operation Phantom Strike had taken 5 years to plan and position. Today the galaxy would learn that humanity's patience had limits. Execute, he said simply. Across the galaxy, coalition worlds experienced the impossible. Ships materialized from empty space, unleashed devastating attacks and vanished before any response could be mounted. Orbital defense platforms that had protected alien worlds for centuries were reduced to glowing debris in minutes. Military bases that had never been threatened found themselves under assault by weapons that seemed to bend the laws of physics. Karathi Prime, Admiral Vex Kalar watched in horror as human ships phased through his planetary shields as if they were made of light. The attackers struck with surgical precision, destroying military targets while leaving civilian areas untouched. It was a message as much as an attack. We could have killed everyone, but we chose not to. This time. How many ships? He hissed at his tactical officer. Unknown, sir. Our sensors can't maintain locks on them. They appear to exist partially outside normal spacetime. Impossible. No species has that technology. Sir, we're receiving a transmission. It's in human language. The main screen flickered to life. A human face appeared. Scarred, cold, and utterly without mercy. Admiral Dongmin Song looked directly at the Karathi commander, who had supervised the bombardment of Earth cities 38 years ago. Admiral Vex Kalar, we've been looking for you for a very long time. The Karathi's scales rippled with fear. Humans, you're supposed to be extinct. We got better. Dongmin's smile was like a blade. Did you really think you could murder 10 billion people and face no consequences? Did you believe your victims would simply accept genocide and disappear quietly? The coalition will respond to these attacks. You cannot hide forever. Hide? Dongmin laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Admiral, we're not hiding anymore. We're hunting, and you're the prey. The transmission ended. Seconds later, Karathi Prime's orbital command center vanished in a burst of quantum fire. Admiral Vexcalar's ship tried to flee, but human vessels appeared around it like hunting wolves surrounding wounded prey. There were no survivors. Similar scenes played out across Coalition space. On Vex Prime, crystalline beings who had considered themselves immortal watched their greatest cities crumble under weapons that disrupted their molecular structure. In Nefari space, gas-form entities found their cloud cities dispersed by harmonic resonance weapons, designed specifically to target their unique physiology. But the physical attacks were only part of the operation. While human fleets struck military targets, other teams worked to undermine coalition unity from within. Jiwan Park, daughter of the late Commander Jinho Park, led a special forces unit into the heart of coalition intelligence headquarters on the neutral world of Sanctuary Station. Her team moved through security systems that had never been breached, past guards who couldn't see them, into the most classified archives in the galaxy. Ghost Leader, we're in the data vault, whispered Sergeant Minsu over the comm. These files contain everything. Military plans, diplomatic communications, dirty deals between coalition species. Download it all, Jiwan replied. But more importantly, plant the evidence packages. Make sure they find what we want them to find. The evidence had been carefully crafted by human intelligence over several years. Financial records showing Karathi leaders embezzling funds meant for Vex colonies. Communication intercepts revealing Nefari plans to manipulate gas giant resources at the expense of their allies. Military assessments where each coalition species rated the others as potential threats. All of it was fake, but all of it was believable. Within hours of the data's discovery, coalition leaders were accusing each other of betrayal and corruption. Ancient prejudices surfaced. Trust eroded. The alliance that had united to destroy humanity began to tear itself apart. On the fortress world of Karathis Prime, Seokjin-ha completed his 3-year mission. For 36 months he had posed as a Thraxian exchange student at the Coalition's premier military academy. His altered appearance was perfect. Scaled skin, elongated limbs, even modified vocal cords that could reproduce Thraxian speech patterns flawlessly. During those 3 years, he had identified every cadet who showed exceptional promise, every instructor with important connections, every administrative officer with access to classified information, and gradually, carefully, he had recruited them, not to betray their species. That would have been discovered. Instead, he convinced them to believe in a new vision of galactic peace, one where the coalition expanded its authority, where military efficiency was prized above all else, where suspicious activities by member species should be reported immediately to Central Command. The cadets he influenced graduated and took positions throughout coalition space. The instructors he befriended gained promotions to important planning committees. The administrators he charmed found themselves with access to even more sensitive information, and when Operation Phantom Strike began, every one of them received coded messages that activated programming they didn't even know they possessed. Suddenly, coalition officers throughout the galaxy began reporting suspicious activities by their own allies. Military commanders found their orders questioned by subordinates who were certain they had detected signs of treachery. Communication networks became clogged with false reports of enemy infiltration. The coalition military structure, already reeling from direct human attacks, began to consume itself with paranoia and mistrust. But perhaps the most devastating attack came from an unexpected source. Dr. Narration had spent 20 years developing weapons that would have horrified her younger self. As head of the Biotechnological Warfare Division, she had created viruses, toxins, and genetic disruptors that could target specific alien physiologies while leaving humans completely unaffected. Her masterpiece was elegant in its simplicity. A virus that affected Karathi scale production, making their natural armor brittle and painful. A harmonic frequency that caused Vex crystal matrices to develop microscopic fractures, leading to eventual structural failure. A molecular agent that disrupted Nefari gas form cohesion, forcing them to spend most of their time in painful compression suits. None of the biological weapons were lethal. That would have been too obvious. Instead, they were debilitating, demoralizing, and completely untraceable to any known source. Coalition medical facilities found themselves overwhelmed with patients suffering from mysterious ailments that their best scientists couldn't explain. The beauty of it, Nari explained to her research team as they monitored the results, is that they can't even be sure they're under attack. These could be natural evolutionary pressures, environmental factors, or just bad luck. But somehow, only Coalition species are affected, while every other race in the galaxy remains perfectly healthy. Coalition leaders tried to negotiate. Desperate messages went out on all frequencies, offering reparations, territory, even complete withdrawal from former human space. The response came from President Guri Kang, transmitted simultaneously to every major Coalition world. She appeared on screen in the formal dress uniform of the Terran hegemony, a government that hadn't existed when Earth fell, but which now represented 2 million humans scattered across dozens of hidden colonies. To the leaders of the Coalition, she began, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who had survived humanity's darkest hour. You have offered us reparations for the crime of genocide. You have offered us territory from the worlds you stole. You have offered us peace terms for a war you started. Behind her, the bridge of the dreadnought Earth's vengeance hummed with barely contained power. Human officers worked at stations equipped with technology that violated Coalition understanding of physics. We reject all your offers. You had your chance to coexist with humanity. You chose extinction instead. We are simply returning the favor. Transmission paused as Guri turned to look directly into the camera. Her eyes held the accumulated fury of 40 years of exile and loss. You used our trust against us. You took the technology we offered in friendship and turned it into weapons for genocide. You celebrated the death of our world and the murder of our people. You made one fatal error. You left survivors. And those survivors have spent 4 decades learning a simple truth. The galaxy is not a place for naive idealism or hopeful cooperation. It is a place where only the strong survive, and the weak are consumed by those who prey upon compassion. You taught us this lesson with the blood of 10 billion human beings. Now class is in session, and we will be your teachers. The transmission ended with coordinates, the location of a Coalition mining operation in neutral space. When Coalition forces arrived to investigate, they found the entire facility had been converted into a monument. 10 billion metal markers. Grand Admiral Junho Lim stood before the largest gathering of human military forces since the evacuation of Earth. The Vengeance Armada stretched across 3 solar systems, ships that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, their hulls shimmering with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. Today we stop hiding, he announced to the assembled fleet commanders. Today we stop hunting from the shadows. Today we show the Coalition what humanity has become when pressed to the edge of extinction. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of 200 human capital ships, each one equipped with technology that would have seemed like magic to the scientists who had fled burning Earth 40 years ago. These vessels could phase between dimensions, manipulate gravity itself, and deploy weapons that targeted the fundamental forces holding matter together. Captain Yoon Seo Kim of the dreadnought Soul's Revenge spoke from her command bridge. Admiral, our deep-range scouts confirm Coalition forces are massing around their core worlds, 3,000 ships between Karathi Prime, Vex Central, and the Nefuri home clouds. Good. They're exactly where we want them. Junho smiled coldly. They think they're creating a defensive perimeter. Actually, they're gathering our targets in convenient locations. The human fleet began to move. Ships that had spent decades hiding in the spaces between stars emerged into normal space-time, their very presence causing sensor readings that Coalition scientists would later claim were impossible. Gravity wells formed around vessels that massed less than traditional frigates. Energy signatures appeared that suggested power sources beyond current galactic understanding. Dr. Nari Shin monitored the deployment from her command ship, Darwin's Wrath. Her biotechnological warfare division had prepared special gifts for each Coalition species, weapons designed specifically to exploit their unique physiologies and psychology. Karathi delivery systems are loaded and ready. reported her chief scientist, Dr. Young-ho. The scale-rot virus will make their natural armor useless within hours of exposure. Non-lethal, but completely debilitating. Vex harmonic disruptors are calibrated, added Dr. Sunhee. Their crystal matrices will begin developing microfractures that will spread throughout their population centers. Again, not fatal, but it will require them to spend most of their resources on medical treatment. Nephri compression agents are deployed in atmospheric torpedoes. Their gas-formed bodies will lose cohesion for approximately 6 months. They'll survive, but they won't be able to maintain military operations. Nari nodded approvingly. The weapons were devastating but not genocidal. Humanity would not become the monsters that had destroyed Earth. But their enemies would learn that there were worse things than death. There was helplessness, humiliation, and the certainty that everything you had built could be taken away by forces beyond your understanding. The first battle began at Karathi Prime. Coalition defenders had prepared for traditional warfare. Energy, weapons, missile exchanges, boarding actions. They were not prepared for human ships that could phase through their shields, appear inside their defensive perimeters, and deploy weapons that seemed to violate basic physics. Admiral Vex Thular commanded the Karathi home fleet from his flagship Scale of Victory. He had studied human combat records from the old war, confident that superior numbers and advanced technology would carry the day. He was about to receive a harsh education in how much humans could change when survival depended on innovation. Contact. Human ships dropping out of hyperspace at the system edge, his tactical officer reported. Estimated 40 vessels. We have them outnumbered 20-1. Launch all fighters. Begin bombardment patterns. Today we finish what we started on Earth. But as the Karathi fleet moved to engage, something impossible happened. The human ships simply vanished. Not destroyed, not retreating, but gone as if they had never existed. Coalition sensors showed empty space where moments before enemy vessels had been clearly visible. Where did they go? Vex Thular demanded. His answer came in the form of quantum torpedoes materializing inside his fleet formation. Human ships phased, back into normal space directly among the coalition vessels, their weapons already firing at point-blank range. Karathi ships, built for long-range engagements, found themselves in a knife fight with enemies that could become incorporeal at will. Thunin, Scale of Victory shuddered as human weapons punched through shields that had never failed before. But these weren't the energy beams and explosive missiles that coalition forces knew how to counter. These were gravity lances that crushed hull plating into neutron-dense fragments. These were quantum disruptors that unraveled molecular bonds. These were neural warfare pods that broadcast directly into Karathi nervous systems, causing paralysis and disorientation. "Sir, we need to retreat," his tactical officer gasped, scales pale with terror. "They're not fighting a battle. They're conducting an execution." Vex Thular watched his proud fleet dissolve around him. Human ships moved like ghosts, appearing, striking, and vanishing faster than his weapons could track. When coalition vessels tried to coordinate their fire, the humans simply phased into dimensions where normal weapons couldn't reach them. But the worst part wasn't the destruction. It was the precision. Human forces targeted weapon systems, engines, life support. They disabled ships without destroying them, leaving coalition crews floating helplessly in space. It was deliberate humiliation, a demonstration of complete technological superiority. "This is Admiral Junho Lim of the Terran Hegemony," came a transmission on all frequencies. The human leader's face appeared on every coalition screen, his expression calm and professional. "Admiral Vex Thular, you are ordered to surrender your remaining forces immediately." The Karathi admiral's throat sac swelled with rage. "Humans, do not give orders to the coalition. We destroyed your pathetic world. We will destroy you again." Junho's smile was colder than space itself. "Admiral, 40 years ago you murdered 10 billion civilians because you could. Today we're sparing your military personnel because we choose to. The difference between us is that we remember the distinction between strength and cruelty. You speak of mercy after attacking our worlds?" "Mercy?" Junho's expression hardened. "Admiral, If we wanted to show you the same mercy you showed Earth, Karathi Prime would already be a cloud of radioactive dust. We targeted your military installations while leaving civilian areas untouched. We disabled your ships instead of vaporizing them. We are giving you the chance to surrender instead of simply erasing you from existence. The transmission paused as Junho consulted something off-screen. But our patience has limits. You have 30 seconds to order a general surrender, or we demonstrate why 40 years of preparation has made humanity more dangerous than you can possibly imagine. Vex Thuler looked around his bridge. Half his officers were unconscious from neural warfare attacks. His ship's weapons were offline, his engines were dead, and his shields had failed completely. Around him, the pride of the Karathi fleet floated as helpless debris. The Karathi home fleet surrenders. Similar scenes played out across Coalition space. At Vex Prime, crystalline beings who had considered themselves the galaxy's technological masters watched human ships deploy harmonic weapons that turned their greatest cities into musical instruments of destruction. The crystal spires that had stood for millennia began to sing haunting melodies as microfractures spread through their structures. Commander Zax Crystal Singer led the Vex defense fleet in a desperate attempt to prevent the destruction of their homeworld. His people had developed energy weapons that could shatter planets, but the human attackers simply absorbed the energy and redirected it back at their targets. How are they doing this? He transmitted to his fellow commanders. Our weapons should be able to destroy any known material. His answer came from Captain Heejin Choi, leading the stealth attack wing. Commander, your weapons are designed to fight enemies that exist entirely in normal spacetime. We've learned to step outside those limitations. Her ship, the Shadow Walker, phased through the Vex flagship's defenses and deployed a harmonic resonance weapon directly against the crystal hull. The entire vessel began to vibrate at frequencies that caused excruciating pain to any crystalline being aboard. Surrender now, and the harmonic attack stops, Heejin offered. Continue fighting, and every Vex ship in this system learns what happens when your molecular structure becomes a musical instrument. The Vex surrender came within minutes. In Nefari space, gas-form entities faced weapons they couldn't have imagined. Human ships released atmospheric compression agents that forced the cloud beings into dense, painful forms they hadn't experienced since their species' evolutionary childhood. High Drifter Nef Wind Dancer, commanding the Nefari defense clouds, found his people's natural advantages completely neutralized. Nefari forces had always relied on their ability to disperse when threatened, becoming too diffuse for enemy weapons to target effectively. But human compression weapons forced them into solid states where they could be trapped, contained, and disabled. Ancient ones preserve us, he whispered as his fleet of gas-form warriors was compressed into holding tanks aboard human ships. They have learned to cage the wind itself. But the most devastating aspect of humanity's return wasn't there. President Sun Ho Bei stood in the rebuilt chambers of New Geneva Station, looking out at the assembled representatives of what was now called the Terran hegemony. 3 years had passed since the Coalition's surrender, and the galaxy was still learning to live under human rule. Behind him sat the original oath-takers, the survivors who had lived to see their vengeance fulfilled. Admiral Suman Lee, now 93 years old but still sharp as a blade. General Woo-sung Kim, bearing scars from 100 battles across 4 decades. Dr. Yuna Kim, whose genetic preservation work had saved humanity from extinction. And dozens of others who had carried the flame of human determination through the darkest years. The transition reports are in, Sunho announced to the assembly. Karathi Prime has completed its conversion to a human administrative center. The Vex research stations are now producing technology for human colonies. Nefari gas harvesting operations are providing materials for our expansion fleets. The numbers were staggering. In 3 years, humanity had transformed from hidden refugees to masters of 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. But the transformation had not been without challenges. Counselor Young Jae Moon, head of the Integration Council, stood to address the EO Assembly. His department was responsible for governing nearly 2 billion alien civilians who now lived under human authority. The psychological adjustment programs are showing mixed results, he reported. Younger Karathi and Vex populations are adapting to human oversight relatively well. They're learning our languages, accepting our educational systems, and some are even requesting to serve in human colonial ventures. He paused, consulting his datapad. But the older populations are struggling. They remember when their species ruled their own worlds. Many still view humans as violent conquerors rather than legitimate administrators. Sunho nodded. This was the problem he had expected. What about the resistance movements? Minimal and poorly organized. Our intelligence networks detect occasional meetings, but they lack the resources or coordination to pose a real threat. Most coalition species are too physically debilitated from our biological warfare campaigns to mount effective resistance. Dr. Narration, her hair now streaked with silver, spoke from her position at the Science Council table. The biological pacification programs are still active in coalition populations. Scale rot in Karathi, crystal fractures in Vex, compression sickness in Nefari. These conditions require ongoing medical treatment that only human facilities can provide. It was an elegant system of control. Coalition species needed human medical technology to maintain their health, human food distribution to prevent starvation, and human protection to prevent conflicts between different alien groups. They had become completely dependent on their former enemies for survival. Some of our people are calling it slavery, said Representative Su Young-jung from her position in the Colonial Affairs section. There are questions about whether we're any better than the coalition was when they ruled through fear and superior technology. The chamber fell silent. This was the debate that had divided human leadership since their victory. After 40 years of struggle and sacrifice, how much mercy did they owe the species that had tried to erase them from existence? Admiral Suman Lee struggled to her feet, her age-bent frame still commanding respect from everyone in the room. I was there when Earth burned, she said quietly. I watched the coalition use the technology we shared with them to murder 10 billion human beings. I saw them celebrate our extinction while they turned our homeworld into a graveyard. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. But I also remember what we were before the war. We were explorers, builders, dreamers. We reached out to the galaxy with hope and friendship. The coalition destroyed that version of humanity, but they couldn't destroy our capacity to be better than our enemies. She looked around the chamber at the faces of human leaders from across the galaxy. We are not enslaving coalition species. We are teaching them to live in a civilized galaxy. The difference is that our students have a choice: learn to coexist peacefully, or discover that human patience has limits. The debate was interrupted by an urgent communication from the expansion fleet. Captain Su Young-jung's image appeared on the main screen, transmitted from her flagship deep in unexplored space. Mr. President, we've made contact with a new species. In the Andromeda approach vectors, they call themselves the Talvek, and they're different. Different how, Captain? They knew we were coming. They'd been monitoring our expansion for months, studying our methods, our technology, our approach to first contact, and they want to negotiate. The chamber buzzed with conversation. Since the coalition's fall, human expansion fleets had contacted 17 new species. Most had submitted immediately upon learning about humanity's victory over their former oppressors. A few had attempted resistance and been quickly overwhelmed. None had been prepared for human arrival. They're offering voluntary integration into the hegemony, Captain Jung continued. Full cooperation, shared technology, cultural exchange, but they want guarantees about their autonomy and representation in human government. President Sunho looked around the chamber. This was the moment they had been preparing for. Proof that their reputation had spread beyond coalition space. New species were learning that the galaxy now belonged to humanity, and they were choosing cooperation over conquest. Bring them here, Captain. If they want to negotiate, we'll show them how civilized species conduct diplomacy. 3 weeks later, the Talvek delegation arrived at New Geneva Station. They were tall, elegant beings with metallic skin and compound eyes that could perceive energy patterns invisible to most species. Their leader, High Arbiter Velkash, spoke perfect human English and carried a detailed analysis of human expansion policies. We have studied your methods extensively. Velkash explained to the assembled human leadership. Your victory over the coalition, your integration of conquered populations, your technological advantages. We have concluded that resistance would be both futile and unnecessary. Unnecessary? Sunho asked. Your species has demonstrated that it can be both ruthless and reasonable. You destroyed those who threatened you, but you have not committed genocide against civilian populations. You rule through strength, but you also provide order, protection, and prosperity to those under your authority. The Talvek delegation presented detailed proposals for voluntary integration. They offered their advanced metallurgy technology, their expertise in energy manipulation, and their knowledge of species in the Andromeda approach. In return, they asked for autonomous governance of their home systems under human oversight and representation in the hegemony's expanding council structure. We prefer cooperation to conquest, Velkash concluded, and we believe humanity prefers willing allies to reluctant subjects. The negotiations lasted for weeks, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Talvek became the first species to voluntarily join the Terran hegemony, setting a precedent that would be followed by dozens of others in the coming years. But not all expansion was peaceful. In the Outer Rim territories, human fleets encountered species that had allied with the coalition or provided support during the genocide. These encounters followed a different pattern entirely. Admiral Dongmin Song commanded the Retribution fleets that dealt with coalition supporters. His flagship, Earth's Vengeance, had become a symbol of human justice throughout the galaxy. When species that had celebrated humanity's near extinction found human warships in their skies, they knew their time for reckoning had arrived. The Ketvar provided biological weapons to the coalition during the war, he reported during a council session. Their military leaders boasted about contributing to human casualties. They've refused all offers of peaceful integration. Recommendations? President Sunho asked. Complete military occupation, dismantlement of their weapons industry, relocation of their leadership to penal colonies. Their civilian population will be integrated into human educational programs to remove the cultural elements that made them willing participants in genocide. It was harsh, but it was also fair by the standards humanity had established. Species that had actively supported the coalition's war crimes faced consequences proportional to their involvement. Those that had remained neutral or been coerced into cooperation were offered the chance to prove their commitment to peaceful coexistence. The galaxy was learning that the Terran hegemony operated on simple principles. Cooperation was rewarded, neutrality was tolerated, and hostility was crushed with overwhelming force. 5 years after the coalition's surrender, President Sunho stood once again in New Geneva Station's assembly chamber. But this time, the audience was different. Human representatives still dominated, but now they were joined by delegates from 43 different species that had chosen to join the hegemony. Talvek engineers worked alongside human scientists on projects that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Former coalition species contributed their expertise to human colonies, earning respect and autonomy through demonstrated loyalty. New species from unexplored regions sought audiences with human administrators, hoping to negotiate favorable terms for integration. The expansion reports show remarkable progress, Sunho announced. Human colonies now exist in over 200